Greetings and welcome to Spiritual Life Today. My name is Jennifer Allred, and I am honored to be here with you as your chaplain and one of your priests to spend a little time with you on a spiritual topic or practice or other spiritually relevant topic that we hope will be interesting or useful to you today. And that's what we try to do each day with this particular program. So, what I wanted to spend a little time talking about today is monasticism. And that might sound a little strange at first glance because most of us are not monastics, and most of us don't live in some kind of cloistered community with other monastic men or women. And so it might seem a little far from the kind of life that most of us live out in the world. But there are a couple things about that. One is that there might be more in common than you think. And the other is that I would like to suggest that there are a lot of things we can learn from each other and from the monastic tradition and kind of import into our world and into our spiritual lives and practices. So what I've brought today to use as kind of a text for talking about that is this little tiny book called Always We Begin Again, The Benedictine Way of Life. And it's just this short little book that is written by a man named John McQuiston, and the foreword is written by Phyllis Tickle, who is a New Testament scholar, among other things. But I just want to offer this because I think we all can really learn a lot from the monastic traditions. And I know I've occasionally found myself wondering or wishing, that I could live in that way, or wondering what it would be like to be a monastic. And I have a few good friends who are monastics, and it's been interesting to learn from them what their lives are like. But for now, let me read you the foreword to this little book by Phyllis Tickle, because she makes some really great points that I think are interesting and fun about the benefits of the monastic life. So she calls the foreword Monks, Brains, and Happiness. Almost everything monks and nuns do is good for them. EEG and MRI observations of the brains of Tibetan monks while they are engaged in their traditional loving-kindness meditation reveal pronounced increases in electrical activity and blood flow in the left prefrontal cortex. This is a part of the brain associated with states of happiness and well-being. Similar studies of Carmelite nuns engaged in centering prayer demonstrate comparable results. Both practices involve maintaining a meditative state in which the mind is focused on thoughts of love. The role of Saint Benedict prescribes these daily activities: attending services of prayer, observing the lesser silence during the day and the greater silence at night, engaging in Lectio Divina, the slow, purposeful study of a sacred text, usually the Bible, and performing acts of altruism, hospitality, compassion, and loving kindness to one another and to those in need. The rule also decrees that all duties be performed cheerfully. That might be a little ambitious for me, but okay. In addition to the reports of the positive effect of the brain on the brain of states of meditation or prayer focused on thoughts of love, other studies reveal the following about common monastic practices. Maintaining loving thoughts increases serotonin levels. Serotonin is a natural chemical that tends to reduce anxiety and increase calmness. Multinational surveys reveal that in every culture, the people who report being the most satisfied with life are its more altruistic members. Volunteers who were assigned to spend money on others experience greater happiness than those assigned to spend money on themselves. Simply being in silence reduces stress and blood pressure. Persons who meditated daily for 2 or more months were less depressed, anxious, and angry than before. Chorals, singing, and chant raise serotonin levels. Being cheerful and smiling release endorphins and serotonin into the bloodstream and reduce blood pressure. Endorphins are natural chemicals which have a morphine-like effect. Persons engaged in regular meditation produce less of the stress hormone cortisol. They have reduced risk of heart attack and stroke. Regular periods of focused concentration, such as during meditation and Lectio Divina, fight dementia. In fact, meditation is prescribed as a treatment for dementia. Contrary to previous assumptions, it is now known that new growth can be accomplished even in older brains. The more human beings practice any behavior, including the maintenance of certain thought patterns, the more the brain responds by embedding that behavior in its dendrites. Dendrites are branches of nerve fibers through which the brain's neurons communicate with each other. Repetition of behavior, whether one's tennis serve or certain thoughts, cause the connections related to that behavior to strengthen. In a word, common monastic practices produce well-being. That should not surprise us. Jesus told us 2,000 years before modern medical science that the kingdom of God is an inner state. When he was confronted by the Pharisees who demanded, "When shall the kingdom of God come?" Jesus answered, "The kingdom of God is not found through observation, neither is it found by looking here or looking there, for the kingdom of God is within you." In 20 years since I was introduced to the rule of Saint Benedict, I have become convinced that the unstated, central principle of the rule is that Christianity was intended to be, and should be, a particular way of being in the world. It should be a way of life, a way followed by being a person of loving kindness, a compassionate person, a person in caring relationship with one's neighbor. It should never be mere belief. I say mere belief intentionally. Beliefs are made of words, and words are limited, flawed, human expressions. To borrow an image from the Buddhist tradition, words are only fingers pointing, not the object they are pointing at. It is not too strong to say that the assertion by any group that it possesses the ultimate statement of correct belief is an idolatrous claim to know the mind of God. Such claims cause division, conflict, discrimination, and worse. Love, and in that word I include kindness, altruism, compassion, and empathy, should be paramount to statements of faith, however revered. Though I have all faith so to move mountains and have not love, I am nothing. From 1 Corinthians. Saint Benedict's rule is a way of being in the world. Jesus' life exemplified a way of being in the world. I am the way, the light, and the truth. We usually think of truth as a set of propositions, but the Bible speaks of a truth that is lived. Let us love, not in word or speech, but in truth and in action. From 1 John. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. From the Gospel of John. Jesus taught the preeminence of compassionate living over correct belief. He told the story of the priest and Levite, who, no doubt, professed all the correct religious beliefs. However, they walked past the wounded man on the other side of the road, in contrast to the Samaritan, a heretic, who stopped to take care of him. The ancient teaching of the paramount importance of maintaining an attitude of love was confirmed in Jesus' reply to the question of the greatest commandment. Then one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him. Master, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and all the prophets. In this passage, Jesus cited Jewish scriptures that predated him by centuries. Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 5, known as the Shema, said by Jews for centuries and said today, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And Leviticus 19:18, You shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am convinced no one comes to the kingdom of God that is within each of us, except by living the way of love. All who live in love, and only those who live in love, enter that kingdom. And they do so regardless of differences in the words they use to express beliefs. Love is not a belief. It is an attitude and an action. The two themes of this preface reinforce one another. Medical studies report the positive physiological effects of meditating on and living in loving kindness, corroborating the wisdom of the Bible and the rule. We are, in the words of Psalm 139, wonderfully made, because we are made to find the kingdom of God within through the way of love. With these thoughts in mind, I have revised this text to make a change in emphasis. And that part we probably don't need to read. So you get the idea that it's very interesting when modern science sort of circles back and corroborates ancient wisdom. And I think there's a case of that going on here. And I think it's important to note that the brains of monks and nuns have been measured and have been measured to measure positive effects associated with the practices of monastics like prayer, structure, community, and service, among others. And so I think it's really important, though, to note that it's not just the Christian tradition that has monasticism. Monastics play a prominent role in Buddhism, in Hinduism, and also in Jainism. There may be others, but those are the ones I know. So it's not just the West, and it's not just the Christian faith that has monastics. In fact, it predates Christianity. So they're onto something, and I think this preface is kind of telling us some of the facts of that when you get monks and nuns, certainly not all of them, and not perfectly, but some monks and nuns, in an EEG or MRI machine and start looking at their brains, we've been able to observe some pretty fascinating things about what happens to their brains as a function of their brains being formed, being trained in these practices of loving kindness, of meditation and prayer over time, over years. Not that my understanding is it doesn't take years to see some benefits, but it does seem to kind of compound and the benefits seem to become more dramatic or more complete over time. So I love how the first sentence of this preface is, almost everything monks and nuns do is good for them. And that just kind of tickles me because most everything monks and nuns do is counter to what mainstream society does. Um, they live simply, they live in community, they don't have much in the way of material stuff in general. Um, they have some, in general, they have some kind of work that they do in kind of in accordance with their gifts and talents and also with their level of ability, um, given whatever that may be at any given stage of their lives. Um, they take care of one another. Um, they also forego um, things like, owning homes or having families that, I think define life for many of us. And so it's not a commitment for everyone and not to be entered into lightly, certainly. But that's kind of why I said at the start of this chat that, there are times in my life or parts of me, I think, that sort of envy that lifestyle and I'm curious about it. And then there are other parts of me who that are didn't make that commitment for a reason, that there were other things that were important to me, like some of the freedoms that I had as a younger person to kind of figure out my path, or like now having a family. So, I don't mean to idealize monasticism and say, it's this wonderful thing that everyone should run out and go do it, because it is certainly not for everyone. In fact, it's for the pretty rare person for whom it's a fit. But the reason I bring it up is because there are some really appealing things about it in the kind of over materialistic, over busy world that we live in today. And I think there are things that we can learn without having to run away and sign up for the monastery. That there are things we can learn, practices we can take with us that might benefit our hearts and our minds and our bodies and our souls, such as meditation. Well, the ones I think I'll list in some major categories, but there's meditation, prayer, and for some people those might be combined, but in Christian tradition, less likely to combine those. So prayer, meditation, some kind of structure, routine, or order, according to which we organize our days. And that also might go, that routine or order might also go along with prayer. In the Christian tradition, we have the daily, or at least in the Catholic and Episcopal traditions, we have the daily office, which is a series of prayers that are prayed at certain times of the day and that punctuate the day in a certain way. So that could be part of the routine or structure that we give to our days through prayer. Service and community. And I'm sure there are others, but those are pretty major categories that fit most, not all, but most monastic traditions. And so I think we really can look at these monks and nuns and the way they live their lives and learn from them. And I think most of us long for those things. I think we really do, maybe not immediately, but kind of deep down, long for the opportunity to serve each other, the chance to meditate and to experience silence, which is so rare in our culture, the chance to pray and to cultivate our relationship with God, and to do so in a way that's intentional and that is regular, not just kind of what happens to many of us in the pace of our lives is that we just kind of pray when we think about it or when it occurs to us, and not so much with a kind of disciplined praxis. And so that discipline can really help a lot of people grow closer to God in their spiritual journey. The ordering of our days, so structure, routine, and simplicity. So any one of those would do, but I think what I would like to invite us to do today is to pick, depending on what you may or may not, what you may already be doing, to pick a very simple prayer practice. And that could be something that you make up, or it could be something that is kind of prescribed. The morning prayer liturgy or words in the prayer book, in the Book of Common Prayer for the Episcopal Church, is lovely. It's short and lovely and simple. And so if you're someone who doesn't really like to make up your own structure, you kind of feel like you need and prefer to have that structure be something that already exists and that maybe comes from the tradition, then I would recommend to you strongly the Book of Common Prayer morning prayer. And it's easy to find in the front table of contents. But just, maybe it's something like praying your gratitudes at night, or keeping a prayer list for people around you, or for the needs and wounds and cares and concerns of the greater world. There are many, many, many ways to pray, so many ways to pray. But I would invite you just to pick one. And if you're already doing some, that's wonderful. And I don't discourage that. I also find that it can really be re-energizing and kind of renewing to try something new, or to kind of mix it up every so often. So if you're already doing a prayer practice that you feel works for you, keep it, but maybe add something else. And it can be really simple. It doesn't need to be long or complicated, but let's look to our monastic tradition, and to sort of see what some of the benefits of prayer and silence, or both, really can be, and give ourselves the chance to grow in that way. It can't hurt, and I can almost guarantee you that it will help if you take on some slightly new or different prayer practice. And if you want some help with resources, whether books or prayer practices, or different monastic traditions and what they are, and what something you could maybe read or learn about them to be inspired, please reach out and let me know. We can be reached at the Pastoral Care Request line at extension 111, or by my individual phone or email, which any staff person can help you get a hold of. So I would encourage you to do that, just to kind of find and ferret out some small thing that is new to you, but that has a tried and true track record as prayer and meditation do, and see where it might lead you. Like I said, we can't all be monastics, but we can all borrow from the wisdom of their ages, and look for greater self-awareness, greater spiritual maturity and depth, and greater closeness with God. So I wish you all of those things, friends. May you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day, and may you be renewed thinking about the wisdom of the monastics. Thank you for joining me today. Bye-bye.